going to say, for me, each time was just another lesson. It was another level of learning. With the feedback, what could I do or what did I need to continue to work on in order to be ready and prepared for the work? I honestly would not want to be in a job that I'm not prepared for, especially when we talk about education, because our children are depending on us to know what we're talking about and to be equipped to get the job done at a high level. And so I would say, if you aren't ready, it's okay to go back to the drawing board, study up a little more, make sure that when you get in the seat, you actually have some answers to some of the questions, because our kids they're dependent on us.
Everyone, we are super excited to have Dr. Jana Haywood from the great state of Missouri, the city of St. Louis, on the My K12 Career Show to share her story, her journey with our viewers and our listeners. Dr. Haywood is the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources with the Ferguson Florissant School District. Before that, she was a school principal for many years, most recently in the Rittenhour School District, but before that, she was a principal in the St. Louis Public School District. So she has a lot of experience. She started out as a special ed teacher, and we are super grateful that she's come on the show to share her story and share her journey with us. So Dr. Haywood, what's going on in your life and in your K-12 career right now?
I mean, I really think it's an amazing time to be in education. As you just mentioned, I recently transitioned into central office as a human resource professional. But I would say it's amazing because there's a lot of innovation going on in our field, but there's a lot of challenges. And so coupling those together, I just get to do a lot of problem solving and really try to help people get excited about our work.
That's cool. So you were a principal for a long time, and that's how we know each other. Full disclosure, we were both principals in St. Louis at the same time. So what made you transition to the district level and specifically
So I've always had kind of that professional trajectory and hope to make it to central office at some point in my career. Sure. I think the transition became a little more urgent because of how our profession was being viewed by community members. And so I did some adjunct work because I wanted to excite pre-service teachers about the profession with the Great Resignation and so many people leaving through retirement, or even just the media that people see about what's happening in schools. I want to tell a different story. And so now I get a chance to really go out and recruit and define the narrative of what it is to be a teacher, because it's really an amazing job.
That's true. But I would have to believe that, with the pandemic, the last 2 or 3 years, that it's made it really kind of difficult. They actually coined it, I don't really like this term, the Great Resignation, where a lot of people were leaving our amazing profession. And how has that impacted recruiting and new teachers into the profession, but trying to retain the teachers and educators that you currently have?
Yeah, we've had to be really responsive to just the truth and the facts that school has changed and our world has changed. And the pandemic really exposed a lot of ways that we could be better and how we can maximize efficiency and the value of personal well-being, like embedding that in how we schedule and how we recruit. But I think the other piece is just really trying to make sure that we had a handle on what our identity is as a profession. A lot of other people started defining what we're supposed to do in school and what our priorities are. And so we've had to take that back and add a more balanced narrative to what that is. And with retention, teachers come into the profession because they love children. You don't stay in it if that's not true. And so being able to keep that in front, but also to give them those tools that they need to prioritize their own self-care. So you hear that a lot, and I don't know that we always live it out, but that's one of the missions of our school district for sure.
Okay, that's cool. Now, are you a native of St. Louis?
I am. I'm born and raised. I'm from the Lou, and I'm proud.
That's what's up. Nothing wrong with that at all. So did you always want to be a K-12 educator? Like, was that your major when you were in college?
No, so I kind of stumbled into education. My undergrad is in accounting,
Okay.
and my first job was for a merchandising company. And then I
Wow.
realized as an accountant that I preferred people over spreadsheets. I said, well, when was I happy? And it led me back into education. I had great teachers and coaches myself, and it aligned very well with my faith and my belief around service. And I've been here ever since.
That's awesome. So how long has it been for you?
Gosh, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I started in 2005. It feels like yesterday, but I know it wasn't. So I've been here for almost 20 years now.
You're right. So yeah, 19 years going on 20. Yeah, that's amazing. So we're kindred spirits in that regard. I always like to say I didn't choose K-12 education. K-12 education chose me.
Hmm.
I was a pre-law major and I just love working with young people. And we also have that in common too. You actually started as a special ed teacher and I did too. I always feel like our special ed students are our most vulnerable students. And truthfully, the reason why No Child Left Behind was even started was because particularly our special ed populations were being left behind, right?
Hmm.
How do you feel school districts in general are meeting the needs of our most underserved and neediest students?
Yeah, so when I made the decision to come back and work in education, and I like to say the decision because people often feel like those who can't teach, but it was a true choice because I just
100. Yeah.
saw the profession as so admirable and important. But when I think about our most vulnerable students, when I talk to teachers in terms of how to build their lesson plans, when you think about the child that maybe struggles the most, and you center them and how you're developing that lesson, you usually are able to encapsulate all of your students on both ends. So you have those high flyers, but you also have those students that struggle. And just really trying to figure out how to personalize the experience, knowing relationally what they're interested in, where their gaps are, where the misconceptions may be surfacing, really helps. And it just makes you a better teacher because
Sure.
we have the students, but really we are the student. And
Yeah.
so you have to be paying attention to what's going on in that room so that you deliver the best lesson the first time.
Well, you're right about that. I totally agree with that. I think a lot of times the heavy lift for me as a principal has been making our general ed teachers understand how important it is for them to just really focus on making sure that those students feel like they're a part of the classroom and that there's no separation. I had one of the people that I've interviewed on my show say, it's not SPED, it's just ed. And I love that, right? Because at the end of the day, these are all of our students, right? And the goal with our special ed students is to have them in the least restrictive environment, right? And so the least restrictive environment is having classes with their grade level peers and making sure that they get what they need so that they can be successful in that environment. So how do we ensure that our regular ed teachers really buy into that? Because in a lot of our schools, that still is an issue, right? Where you're trying to make sure that the regular ed teacher is well aware of the accommodations and modifications that special ed students need, but they're also ensuring that those students get that in that regular ed environment.
Yeah, I think that it's multifaceted because one of the things is making sure that our educational programs, those pre-service programs are actually equipping all teachers, because you're right, it's not special ed, it's just ed. And so all teachers should have the ability to meet the needs of all students.
Sure.
I think another piece is partnering teachers with really strong special ed teachers who are able to help strengthen those areas that they have yet to have developed. And I think more than anything, the most effective way to help with inclusion of our students with our teachers is to remind them that we all learn differently. For me personally, if you were to put me in a room and just give me auditory stimulus, it would be difficult for me to grasp the concept.
Sure.
But if you show me visually, I can grab it. I'm more of a concrete learner. And so when we show them that they themselves have a lean of a way that they learn, it just took somebody that was willing to take the time to figure it out. I think that helps them to be more committed to making sure that all students in the classroom have access to the material.
Well said. Love that. So truthfully, we all get into education because we love to teach, and in my case, coach, and I'm sure in your case as well. But what made you pivot from teaching and coaching to admin?
So I think that one of the Incentives for me was the idea that I would be able to broaden my reach because I had had a lot of success as a teacher and developing my students, but I wanted to be able to replicate those successes at a higher scale. And so when I went into administration, I'm like, okay, now I'll be able to share some of the strategies that have been effective for me with other teachers in the building.
Awesome.
And then, you know, in full transparency, there was a little compensation incentive as well. So being able to go from the classroom to administration was a financial incentive too.
That's great.
And now that I've left the building level and I'm now in central office, the same continues to be true. I learned a lot of lessons along the way as a K12 administrator that I'm hopeful to be able to share with those who are now going into those leadership roles.
Yeah, that's really a good segue into my next question. Like, obviously, there's people that are watching us right now that maybe they are a teacher and they're trying to transition into administration. Like, what would be your advice to them?
So I think first off, they need to be really involved in terms of like chairing committees so that they're able to practice their leadership before it's high stake. Because once you are in the seat, accountability takes on a whole different meaning. 100. I think the other piece is expanding their professional network because we all need great coaches and mentors who can help really kind of expedite the process quicker. They've learned the lesson. You don't have to learn every lesson through living. Some things we can learn from others. And sometimes I really wish I had listened to those lessons that people were trying to tell me instead of doing it my own way. Yeah. And then just put yourself out there. It's okay. You may not get the very first position that you apply for. Rejection might be a part of the process. But once you land that perfect fit position, I mean, it's exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. You know, you brought up a good point about mentoring and coaching. You know, even the greatest, when I think about athletes, the greatest athletes of our generation, they had coaches, right? So everyone has a coach. Like, what would you say? Because again, a lot of districts do have like mentoring programs and coaching programs and things of that nature, but professional development also includes being willing to invest in yourself, right? So how do you feel about that? And what advice would you give to those teachers that might want to be administrators one day in terms of investing in their own self-development, professional development, hiring a mentor, hiring a coach outside of their district?
Yeah, so I think every single day you should be the lead learner of your school. And so there should be something that you have added to your toolkit by the time you close your eyes. And it might be reading a newspaper article. It might be listening to a podcast. It could be having a really rich conversation for someone. Because time is it's our greatest resource and it's fleeting. And so it may not look the same all the time. I definitely think that if you haven't received your terminal degree, you should be in classes, completing coursework. I think that's important, you know, going to workshops, conferences, but just making it a part of who you are. Because it's hard to excite people about teaching and learning if you yourself are not learning.
Love that. Yeah. And it sounds like obviously you're a lifelong learner because you started out as a teacher, a coach, you became an administrator, you got your doctorate degree. So you're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk. So that's really cool. And it's also a good segue into my next question. When you become that administrator, right? And let's say you've been in fill in the blank AP or principal for X number of years, and now you're thinking about potentially transitioning from the school level to the district level. You're the perfect person to ask this question because you just made that transition this year. Was it something that you said in, I don't know, 22, 23, you know what? I'm going for a district level position, and first position you applied for, you got it? Or was it a situation where, just like you said earlier, you know, experienced a little rejection and, you know, kind of went through the bumps and, you know, didn't get this job, thought I was going to get it, but then, you know, what God had for me was for me and I got the perfect position. How did that work out?
So I had set a goal. I had in my mind that by year 15 of my building leadership experience, I was going to transition into admin. It happened a little sooner than that. Okay. But I think it's important to have those professional goals. And then you set up a strategy of sorts of how you're going to get there. And so, you know, I had really great mentors that invested time in me. So they allowed me to shadow them on the job. I completed internship hours, so that would be somewhat familiar. Okay. The position that I currently have is kind of a natural fit. My father's actually a human resource professional. So I have been watching it in real time my entire life. And then, yeah, the rejection piece, I wish I could come up with another term for it because it really was just a delay to get into the position that was right for me. I did not land my first application. You know, I applied a number of places, but now where I am, I think it's where I'm supposed to be at this time and this hour.
I love that. How did you keep from, or how did you stay positive, right? Because look, no one likes to, and I hate to use that term too, rejected or whatever, but I've always believed what God has for me is for me. So I don't look at it as rejection. Like I don't want to walk through any door that I'm not supposed to walk through, right?
Yes.
And that's how I look at it. But how do you look at it? And what kind of advice would you give to people when they do go through that? Because I'm a big believer that failure is not failure unless you accept it as final, right? And yes. I don't believe in failure. I believe in lessons, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth because I was going to say, for me, each time was just another lesson. It was another level of learning. With the feedback, what could I do or what did I need to continue to work on in order to be ready and prepared for the work? I honestly would not want to be in a job that I'm not prepared for, especially when we talk about education, because our children are depending on us to know what we're talking about and to be equipped to get the job done at a high level. And so I would say, if you aren't ready, it's okay to go back to the drawing board, study up a little more, make sure that when you get in the seat, you actually have some answers to some of the questions because our kids they're dependent on us.
I love that. What does the future hold for Dr. Jana Haywood?
Oh my gosh, the future. I have a lot of dreams. I continue to dream really big dreams for myself and for my community. And so I do hope to at some point become superintendent of schools in a school district. Don't know if it'll be here in St. Louis or somewhere else, but all the experience, the compilation of experiences that I have, I do believe are preparing me for that moment. And I'm also just excited about seeing how education will look in the future, because the pandemic certainly showed us we have a lot more capacity than I think we originally knew. And so this next generation that's coming behind us, they are demanding, when I talk about, again, just kind of HR, they're demanding that we prioritize their physical and mental well-being. They're like, just 9 to 5 may not be it. We may need to consider some different kinds of shifts and schedules so that we can have some balance to our life.
Well, that's really powerful. And I'm just going to speak it. Look, I see greatness within you. And I'm not saying that because I already know you, but I see it. And I 100%, I'm telling you, I'm speaking it into the universe. You will be a superintendent one day. And the only thing I ask is that when you do become a superintendent, you come back on the show and you share that journey with us as well. But I definitely see greatness within you, Dr. Haywood. And I just want to thank you for coming on the show and just sharing your heart, your journey, just being fully transparent with our community. However, before you leave, can you share some parting words of wisdom? Tell us how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Absolutely. So my parting word of wisdom is be you. You are great. When I think about the 25-year-old version of myself that entered my classroom, scared to death because I didn't want to mess somebody else's child up. And I was asking lots of questions of all of my mentors, all of my colleagues. It wasn't until I relaxed in who I was and offered my true, authentic self to my students that I began to feel success and see it translate, not just with my own self, but for my students. And so I just want to encourage everyone to take your own path. Yes, there are some that have already been trodden, and certainly you can learn. But make it your own, because no one's going to ever beat you at being you, and you are enough and more than enough. And so if anyone's interested in connecting with me, certainly the Ferguson Florissant School District is currently hiring in many positions. You can visit our website. I'm on LinkedIn and would love to just further the conversation.
Love it. Once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll definitely make sure we put all of your contact information in the show notes, but I just really appreciate you taking the time to share with us your amazing journey, and it's not finished by a long shot, and super excited to see what the future holds for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph.
All right.